Welcome to r/Maliciouscompliance, where OP shuts down an entire McDonald's. Our next Reddit post is from Dr. Deadpool. This happened a few years ago when I worked at McDonald's. The one I worked in was near a bunch of schools, so most of the staff was high school kids. As summer vacation started, we began having the problem of an employee getting a break and then spending their break eating their meal and talking with their friends who were still working in the kitchen. It was having a seriously bad effect on productivity, as well as posing quite a few health risks. So our manager finally initiated a rule that if you were on your break, you couldn't leave the break room until your break was over. This went swimmingly, until the kids went back to school. We then had a new problem. Short staffing during break cycles meant that our ticket times would skyrocket during rushes. Management lifted the rule so that employees on break could clock in early and help out with the rush. However, the district manager didn't like the implications of employees working shortened or no break shifts and forcefully reinstated the rule. They also doubled down by saying that employees who tried to work during their scheduled break would be written up and/or terminated for doing so. Cue malicious compliance. The date was 4/20, a day when nobody wants to be working at any fast food place, much less McDonald's. We had been getting slammed so hard from the open of the store that we called in extra help from the other stores, including the regional and district managers. As the break cycle began, the management was pleased with the under 2-minute ticket times they'd managed to maintain. A few breaks through, and we were managing well. Then came my break. As soon as I sat down to eat, someone came into the store and ordered 47 double quarter pounders. This was right after the Fresh initiative where all quarter pounders were made fresh, so this was already a minor panic. Immediately after that order, someone in the drive-thru ordered 75 orders of 20-piece nugget meals. The amount of panic in the kitchen was palpable. I was comfortably lounging in a chair, browsing my phone and enjoying my meal while the kitchen struggled to keep up with the orders. As ticket times began to soar, the management did exactly as I expected. The district manager came into the break room and demanded me to end my break early and help in the kitchen. My response was very simply, "I'm sorry, but according to the rules you made, I could be written up or terminated for completing your request." I then continued browsing my phone, trying to enjoy the last 10 minutes of my break. The regional manager entered the room and said that he would personally terminate me if I didn't do the thing that I wasn't supposed to do. The other employee who was on break with me immediately rose and clocked in despite still having 10 minutes left on her break. She was written up for breaking the rule after the shift was over, so I felt good sitting in my chair and continuing to ignore them. In the aftermath, the people who made the giant orders took what was made after half an hour and left with refunds for the unmade food. Nearly $150 each. Customers who were waited for smaller orders were compensated with gift cards for their patience, yet many walked out without even getting their orders. We paid out nearly $1,500 in gift cards. Because customers were walking out on orders without collecting them, we had nearly $5,000 in food waste that night. All the closers went home with nearly 2 bundle boxes of burgers, fries, and nuggets. Regional and district managers were moved to a different region. The rule was edited to say that you were able to clock back in early at the manager's discretion in the event of a rush. Because I was the only employee who held his ground against the regional and district managers during the rush, I was rewarded with free meals and drinks until I moved away from my hometown and couldn't eat at that McDonald's anymore. Although, when I come to visit friends, I occasionally get rung up a manager discount by the few employees who still remember me. Down in the comments, people are criticizing the customers for not calling ahead, but come on, all the customers were high and dumb, so of course they didn't think ahead, unlike the managers who were just dumb. Our next Reddit post is from Consistent Shoe. About 20 years ago, I used to work as an office assistant at a small company where we would receive orders from clients, and then we would assign the work to one of our freelancers who were well compensated and respectable professionals. My boss was such a professional herself, and when possible, we would assign that work to her. I accepted the minimum wage job because she told me I could sometimes get tasks assigned as a freelancer with a nice freelancer compensation, that she would personally train me, and that in less than a year, I would most likely be promoted to a regular freelancer and make very good money. This sounded like a great career path to my young and naive ears. One of the things she had told me in the very beginning was that when you take over an order, you become like a project manager for that order. You need to make sure that the freelancer would finish the work on time, as the work was usually time sensitive. Additionally, she loved going on long lectures about how she's paying me minimum wage for me to use my brain and figure things out when necessary. These lectures were mainly a vehicle for her to stroke her own ego by explaining to her employees how our brains were not as smart as hers. One day, our biggest corporate clients had placed a large order that was due on a Monday by noon, and we had assigned the task to my boss to do over the weekend. It was Monday morning, time was ticking, and my boss hadn't arrived at the office. The client had called to see if we were going to provide the work soon, as it was urgent. I tried calling my boss, who didn't pick up her mobile. I called half an hour later and texted her. No answer or reply, while noon was fast approaching. So I called her landline at home. Her husband picked up and told me she wasn't at home, and I explained very briefly why I was trying to get a hold of her. Less than an hour before noon, my boss called furious that I had been so insistent on getting a hold of her and that I had created a state of stress and emergency at her house. Her home number was for emergencies only, and this wasn't an emergency. "It's not professional to call people when they're not at work," she said. She told me she got everything under control, and she was now sending the work to the client directly. When she arrived at the office, she gave me a big scolding in person and told me that I do need to hound other freelancers, but not her. It was her business, and she got everything handled. She knew all the clients, and they were clients because of her. She looked me in the eye and told me, "If I take over a task, it's not your task anymore. It's my task. You don't need to bother me with reminders. You just give me the instructions from the client and I'll handle everything myself. From that point on, your job is done. I never, ever miss deadlines. If the client calls, you tell them I'm on it, and you don't call me or text me about it." Fair enough. I apologized for the stress and repeated the new instructions back to her for confirmation. She was very happy with that and confirmed that I'd understood everything. She once more gave me her favorite lecture about how she's paying me minimum wage for me to use my brain, with a lot of condescending examples of how she always uses her brain, unlike us normal workers. I could only nod along as if her narcissistic rant was actually teaching anybody anything. About a month or so later, another client came in with an order. I accepted it, my boss was available to handle it, so I forwarded everything to her, and I considered my work in regard to that order done as instructed. On the day of the deadline, I was on vacation and was hiking in a remote area with spotty cell coverage. The other office assistant called me and told me the client had called the office to check if the work was ready. I told my colleague that our boss was on it and that we didn't need to worry as our boss was going to handle it, and that my clear instructions were to tell the client our boss was personally on it. The task would be done by the deadline and explicitly not to call our boss to remind her of the deadline. Then, since I was on vacation, I needed to conserve my battery, and everything at the office was handled, so I switched off my phone. An approaching deadline that my boss had to meet was explicitly not an emergency. Also, I had recently realized that my boss had knowingly misled me about the carrier opportunities this job was affording me, so I wasn't going to be on call on my rare day off. While I was hiking without a care in the world, my boss had managed to forget about the deadline. By the time she realized she'd missed it, the office was closed. My boss had urgently finished the work, but it turned out she didn't know the client so well as she didn't have their contact details. As the order was in the office and my phone was off, she had to go there herself, fetch it, and use the contact details to deliver the work late. This was particularly embarrassing, as my colleague had informed the client that our boss was personally doing the work for them. When I came back to work, it was pandemonium. She screamed at me, But I simply pointed out that everything I'd done was following her instructions. "Why'd you do this?" "You told me to." "Why didn't you do that?" "You told me not to." She was fuming, but she knew that I was correct and I'd acted exactly as instructed. She also screamed at me for my phone being off, but I said that I needed to conserve my battery for emergencies, and this was clearly not an emergency, and I'm not on call while on vacation anyways. Malicious compliance for the win, right? Well, narcissists never accept blame, and she had an idea of how to shift the blame to me after all. "But you didn't provide me with the client's contact details with the order assignment. How could I have delivered them the work? It was your fault for not providing me with all the information." I pointed out that she told me that she knew all the clients personally. But if she had used her brain like she's constantly telling us to, she could have easily noticed that the order instructions were on the client's letterhead with all their contact details spelled out. On every single page, bottom and top. Now that was a huge slap to her fragile ego, and remembering her face in that moment still makes me smile. Needless to say, I was fired. Of course, I didn't mind. Don't you just love happy endings? It sounds like the reason why OP was fired was because she became aware that the boss wasn't this perfect paragon of competence and intelligence. And if she really is a narcissist can't tolerate anyone who doesn't worship her. Our next Reddit post is from Mildotes. For clarity, OP uses the term consultation a lot, which I'm pretty sure just means asking a question and the opposing party answering the question. So this happened a while back with a large Australian hospital. The Friday before Christmas, senior management dropped the dreaded restructure notice. It was a standard spiel about realignment, better patient outcomes, efficient practice, blah, blah, blah. They give notice to the staff and unions that consultation closes the first week of January. The new employment structure will take place in February. About 5% of hospital staff, so 200 people, were going to be made redundant. The union launches into the industrial court, arguing that the time given, especially over Christmas, is insufficient. The court agrees and extends the arbitration time by 2 weeks, but issues 2 statements. 1. The industrial court will not slow down this restructure anymore. And 2. It strongly reminds the unions, there were multiple, that you can only consult. Hospital management sees this as a big win, and they're bragging about how they're going to beat us. The unions have a combined meeting and decide that if the staff can only consult, then ask as many questions as we can. The members are asked to field as many questions as possible. My union alone gathered 1,200 questions, with 700 of them unique, and another 800 to 900 questions coming from the other unions. As you can imagine, management does not respond well to our combined 2,000 questions. They attempt to push on. We head back to court, where we remind the judge that he said that we must consult. The court tells our employer that they must answer the question. The restructure is on hold by court order. The court orders both sides to meet back in a month, and hospital management must answer all the questions. We get our answers in 3 weeks' time that consist of yes, no, maybe, possibly, and unsure. All one-word answers. This is not a genuine consultation. We head back to court, and the judge is furious about the lack of real consultation. The hospital argues that it's too many questions to answer, but the judge reminds them that they only have to genuinely consult. Come June, we're in a legal holding pattern when hospital management declares that they're changing the restructure on feedback given and issue new restructure papers. The restructure will take place in 4 weeks' time. The new restructure requires new consultation, which the hospital isn't willing to do. So back to the court the unions go to remind the judge about genuine consultation. We won again just by consulting. Come December, 1 year after all this started, and the hospital hires a consultant to get the restructure done. She has the same attitude as hospital management and tries to rush through the restructure without genuine consultation. We head back to court, and at this stage, the judge has had enough and notes the unions have played by the rules and the hospital hasn't. We hit back with even more questions, and the judge decides that he'll set down monthly meetings with him chairing them to work through this mess. In total, the restructure takes over 3 years with a loss of a lot less jobs than expected. In fact, it was a fraction of jobs expected to go. In some departments, we gained jobs by arguing about the workloads. The vast majority of people who lost their jobs were close to retirement age, and they received a handsome payout. They also got 3+ years of pay, as the restructure took place over that time. Some of the union members had worked less than the 13 years work history maximum payout before the restructure. The 3+ years of delay increased their payouts. All we did was consult by asking questions as the judge ordered. That was r/Maliciouscompliance, and if you like this content, check out my podcast where I publish the exact same episodes. Also, hit that subscribe button because I put out new Reddit videos every single day.